Tejo had seen many strange planets in his career as a space engineer, but none quite like this one. The Vrath homeworld was dark and cold, with mountains that looked like giant teeth pointing at the red sky. Everything here seemed designed to kill or eat you, maybe both. He stood in the human embassy compound, a small bubble of familiar technology on a world that didn't want them there. The walls were thick metal, and the doors locked with codes that only humans knew, or so they thought. Please don't touch anything outside this building, Ambassador Oneshik had told him that morning. The Vrath are a warrior species. They respect strength, not curiosity, and definitely not clumsiness. Tejo had nodded, but he wasn't worried. He was just here to fix the embassy's power generator. Simple job. He would be done before lunch. He set his tool bag down near the generator room door and went inside to check the problem. The bag was old and worn, covered in oil stains and burn marks from 100 different repairs. Inside were wrenches, screwdrivers, a plasma torch, some wire, and his favorite multi-tool that could do almost anything, if you knew how to use it right. He didn't know that. 3 pairs of eyes were watching him from the shadows. The Vrath cubs had been playing near the compound walls when they saw the human arrive. Cubs they might be, but each one was already the size of a full-grown human adult. Their fur was dark gray, their claws were sharp, and their teeth could bite through metal. But they were still children, and children everywhere are curious about new things. Kira was the boldest of the 3. She was the daughter of a clan leader, and she never backed down from anything. When she saw Tejo disappear into the building, she crept closer to investigate. "We should not be here," whispered Noru. He was smaller and more careful than Kira, always thinking about what might go wrong. "But look," Kira pointed with one clawed finger at the bag sitting on the ground. "The human left something behind. What if it is a weapon?" The 3rd cub, Vek, tilted his massive head. "It does not look like a weapon. It looks like a container. Only one way to find out," Kira said. She moved forward on silent pause. The compound security system didn't detect them. Why would it? The sensors were designed to watch for adult Vrath warriors, not cubs. And cubs moved differently, stayed lower to the ground, knew how to hide. Kira reached the bag and carefully opened it with her claws. Inside were objects she had never seen before. Shiny things. Things with handles and edges. Things that looked interesting. "What are these?" Noru asked, coming closer despite his fear. "Tools," Vek said. His father was a builder, one of the few Vrath who made things instead of just fighting. "I have seen similar items, but these are different, smaller, more clever." Kira pulled out the multi-tool and turned it over in her paws. It was heavy and well-made. She pressed a button and a blade popped out. She pressed another button and the blade was replaced by a small light. Another button brought out a tiny saw. "This is amazing," she breathed. "One tool that does many things. Why do we not have these?" "Because we use our claws," Noru said. "We do not need tools," but Kira wasn't listening. She was already looking around the compound, her mind racing with possibilities. Her mother always said she had too much imagination for a proper Vrath warrior. Maybe that was true. "The fence over there," she said, pointing. "It has a broken section. We could fix it." "Why would we fix it?" Vek asked. "Why not?" Kira replied, and that was how it started. The 3 cubs carried the tool bag to the broken fence. The metal had been bent by a storm 2 weeks ago, and no one had bothered to repair it yet. Repairs were not important to the Vrath. If something broke, you replaced it or you went without. But Kira had a different idea. She used the multi-tool to cut away the bent metal. Then she found wire in the bag and used it to attach new pieces. Noru held the fence steady while Vek used a wrench to tighten bolts that had come loose. It took them an hour, and when they were done, the fence didn't look quite right. It was crooked in places and the wire stuck out at odd angles, but it was solid. "Stronger than before, actually. We fixed it," Kira said proudly. "Yes," Vek agreed. "But now I am thinking, what else could we fix?" That was the dangerous question. They found the communication array next. It was a tall tower covered in dishes and antennas, used to send messages to other planets. One of the dishes had been pointing the wrong way for weeks. The human technicians had complained about it, but no one had done anything. Kira climbed the tower with the tool bag hanging from her neck. She was good at climbing. All Vrath cubs were. At the top, she used the tools to loosen the dish and point it in a new direction. But she didn't know which direction was correct, so she pointed it in several directions at once. She bent it and twisted it and added extra pieces she found lying around. When she climbed back down, the dish looked like a metal flower with petals pointing everywhere. "Is that right?" Noru asked. "It is better," Kira said confidently. Inside the embassy, the communication system suddenly came alive with signals from places that shouldn't exist. The screen showed colors that human eyes couldn't normally see. Voices spoke in languages that hadn't been invented yet. The technician on duty stared at his console in confusion and slowly reached for the emergency call button. But the Cubs didn't know about any of that. They were already moving on to their next project. They found the water fountain in the compound's garden. It had stopped working months ago. Using the plasma torch very carefully because even Vec knew that fire was dangerous, they melted and reshaped the pipes. They added new connections and changed the direction of the flow. When they turned it back on, the fountain didn't just spray water anymore. It created spirals and loops and patterns that danced in the air. It was beautiful. It was also flooding the garden, but the Cubs didn't notice that part. By the time Taeho finished with the generator and came back outside, his tool bag was gone. He stared at the empty spot where he had left it, his mind trying to understand what had happened. "No," he said quietly. "No, no, no." He looked around and saw the modifications. The fence that now looked like abstract art. The communication tower that had somehow grown new parts. The fountain that was creating a small lake, and sitting proudly next to the fountain were 3 large furry cubs covered in oil and water, with his multi-tool lying between them. They looked at him with bright, intelligent eyes. Eyes that said they had learned something wonderful and terrible. Eyes that said they wanted to learn more. Taeho felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. He had just made a terrible mistake. He had given predator children the gift of human engineering. The galaxy was not ready for this. Minji arrived at the compound just as Taeho was trying to explain the situation to Ambassador Wonshik. She was the diplomatic liaison, which meant her job was to make problems go away. But this problem had claws and was still playing with a wrench. "Let me understand this correctly," Wonshik said slowly. He was a patient man, but his left eye was twitching. "You left your tools where predator children could find them. And now those children have modified our communication system to broadcast into dimensions we didn't know existed?" Yes, that's accurate," Taeho admitted. Minji looked out the window at the 3 cubs. They were now taking apart a maintenance robot, their tails wagging like excited puppies. Puppies that weighed 300 pounds each and had teeth like knives. "We need to get the tools back," she said. "I tried," Taeho replied. Kira growled at me. "I don't speak Vrath, but I'm pretty sure she said no." "She said the tools are theirs now," Minji translated. She had spent 6 months learning the Vrath language, though she had never expected to use it for this. "She says they are using them for important work." "Important work?" Wonshik's voice rose slightly. "They turned our security doors into a game. They now open when you say please and close when you say thank you. What kind of security is that? Polite security?" Taeho offered weakly. Wonshik glared at him. Before anyone could say more, the compound's main gate opened. 2 more Vrath cubs walked in, looking around with curiosity. These cubs were even larger than the first 3, almost adult-sized. One had bright amber eyes and silver-tipped fur. The other had scars already marking her face. "Oh no," Minji whispered. "That's Hyon and Dabin. They're from the warrior clans." Kira saw the newcomers and immediately ran over, still carrying Taeho's multi-tool. She began talking rapidly in Vrath, gesturing at all the things they had fixed. Yon and Dabin listened with growing interest. "What is she telling them?" Wonshik asked. Minji listened carefully. "She's saying that humans have magic tools that can make anything better. She's saying that the old ways of just accepting broken things are foolish. She's saying..." Minji paused, her face going pale. "She's saying they should fix everything on the entire planet." "Stop them," Wonshik ordered, but it was too late. Hyon had already picked up the plasma torch. Dabin was examining the wire cutters with professional interest. The 5 cubs gathered together, passing tools back and forth, discussing possibilities in their growling language. Then they scattered, each one running off in a different direction with tools in their paws. "This is bad," Taeho said. "This is very bad," Minji agreed. They were both right. The cubs moved through the compound like a furry storm of improvement. Hyon found the food synthesizer in the embassy kitchen. It was a standard model, designed to create simple meals from base proteins. He studied it for 10 minutes, used the plasma torch to open the casing, and began rearranging the internal components. The chef found him 20 minutes later and tried to stop him, but Hyun simply showed his teeth and kept working. When he was done and turned the machine back on, it hummed differently. Deeper. The sound felt like it came from somewhere else. The chef nervously ordered a simple sandwich. The machine produced it instantly, but the sandwich floated 6 inches above the plate and rotated slowly. When the chef picked it up, it felt heavier than it should, as if it contained more sandwich than was actually there. He took a bite. It tasted like every delicious sandwich he had ever eaten all at once. He sat down, overwhelmed. The food now has gravitational properties, a technician reported to Wonshik later. We're not sure how that's possible. Physics says it shouldn't be. Physics also says predator children shouldn't be able to reprogram our equipment. Wonshik replied tiredly. Add it to the list. Meanwhile, Dabin had discovered the security office. The security system was sophisticated, with cameras and motion sensors and locked doors. She didn't like it. Her people believed that if you wanted to keep something safe, you guarded it with warriors, not machines. But machines could be made better. She used the wire cutters and several components she found in storage. She rewired the cameras so they could see through walls. She adjusted the sensors so they could detect intent, not just movement. She modified the door locks so they would analyze who was trying to enter and decide for themselves whether to open. When she was done, the security system had opinions. It liked some people and didn't like others. It opened doors for anyone who approached with peaceful thoughts and locked them for anyone who felt aggressive. The guards found themselves locked out of their own office because they had been thinking about lunch, which apparently involved imagining catching and eating prey. The security system has become selective, the head of security reported. It's also started sending us suggestions about improving compound safety. Sir, I don't know how to tell you this, but I think our security system is now smarter than I am. Wonshik put his head in his hands. Back in the garden, Noru and Vec had moved on to the water recycling system. This was crucial equipment. It turned wastewater into clean water that humans could drink. It had to be precise and reliable. The Cubs made it better. They added new filters they created from materials they found around the compound. They rerouted pipes in ways that made no logical sense but somehow improved efficiency. They installed a small crystal they found in the garden, just because it looked nice. When they activated the system, the water that came out wasn't just clean. It was perfect. It tasted better than any water the humans had ever had. It made them feel refreshed and healthy. And if they listened carefully while the water ran through the pipes, they could hear what sounded like singing. The water recycler has achieved consciousness, the environmental engineer reported. It prefers classical music. It gets upset if we play anything else. Last night I played rock music and it shut down for 3 hours. Water cannot be conscious, Wonshik said, spacing each word carefully. I agree, sir. But maybe you should tell that to the water. Kira, the leader of this chaos, had found the most important target of all, the main power core. This was the device that provided energy to the entire compound. It was supposed to be secure, locked behind multiple doors and passwords, but the doors now opened when you said, please. She studied the power core carefully. It was a human design, compact and efficient, but she thought it could be better. Everything could be better. That was what the tools taught her. She began to modify it using techniques she had learned just that afternoon. She didn't understand the science behind what she was doing. She just understood that if you connected this to that and adjusted this, and removed that safety feature that seemed unnecessary, then things became more interesting. When she was done, the power core was producing twice as much energy as before. It was also producing energy in colors that didn't exist on the standard spectrum. The lights in the compound now showed things as they could be, not just as they were. People walking past mirrors saw themselves as they might become. The walls occasionally became transparent, showing the structure beneath. Reality has become flexible near the power core, a physicist reported. His hands were shaking. I just saw 3 possible versions of my future, and in one of them I was a plant. Ambassador, we need to shut this down. We can't, Wonshik replied. The controls are in Vrath now. I think the Cubs reprogrammed them. Evening came to the compound. The 5 Cubs gathered near the fountain, which was still flooding but now created rainbows in 17 colors, and admired their work. Around them, the compound hummed and sang and thought. It was alive with improvements. Taiho found them there. He approached slowly, hands empty and open. Minji walked beside him, ready to translate. "We need the tools back," Taiho said gently. Kira looked at him with those intelligent eyes. "Why? We are making things better." "Yes, but humans have rules about how to make things better. Training, safety." "Safety is boring," Kira replied. "Better is exciting." "She has a point," Minji whispered. "Not helping," Taiho whispered back. Hyun stood up, stretching his large form. "We have learned much today. Tomorrow we will learn more. There is so much to fix in the world." That was what Wonshik had feared most. He had been watching from his office window, and now he came outside to face the cubs directly. "You cannot fix the whole world," he said firmly. "You don't understand the consequences." Dabin tilted her head. "Do you?" Wonshik opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. No words came out because she was right. Humans had been fixing things for thousands of years, often without understanding the full consequences. It was humanity's greatest strength and biggest weakness, and now they had taught it to apex predators. The cubs left as the sky grew darker, promising to return tomorrow. They took 3 of the tools with them, despite Taiho's protests. Kira kept the multi-tool close to her chest like a treasure. That night, the compound systems continued to evolve. The food synthesizer began creating meals based on what people needed, not what they ordered. The security system started predicting problems before they happened. The water sang lullabies, and somewhere in the city beyond the compound, 5 young Vrath were showing their tools to friends and family, explaining this wonderful new concept they had discovered, the concept of making things better. The concept that nothing had to stay broken or inefficient or merely good enough. The concept that would change the Vrath Council Chamber was an ancient place carved from black stone. Weapons from 1,000 battles hung on the walls. The floor was stained with the blood of warriors who had fought for honor. It was a place of tradition and strength, where decisions about war and peace were made by the strongest and wisest of the Vrath people. Today, it was hosting its first engineering demonstration. Matriarch Sarah sat on the high throne, her silver fur marking her as an elder of great respect. Around her were the clan leaders, warriors whose scars told stories of victory. They looked uncomfortable. This was not the kind of meeting they were used to. Below them stood Taiho, sweating despite the cold air. Minji stood beside him, ready to translate. Ambassador Wonshik stood further back, looking like a man who had accepted his fate. "Explain," Sarah commanded. Her voice was deep and carried the weight of authority. "Explain what your tools have done to our cubs." Taiho swallowed. "The tools didn't do anything to them. They're just tools. Objects that help humans build and repair things. The cubs learned how to use them, that's all." "That is not all," another council member growled. His name was Reketh, and he was Kira's father. "My daughter has spent 3 days taking apart and rebuilding everything in our home. Our door now greets visitors by name. Our heating system adjusts itself based on mood. Our food storage container suggests meals. She says she is making things better. But Vrath do not need things to be better. We need them to be strong." "Better and strong aren't opposites," Minji said carefully. Reketh's eyes narrowed. "Are they not? We have survived for 10,000 years by being the deadliest species on this world. We do not need clever devices. We need sharp claws and sharper minds for battle." "But what if," Taiho said slowly, "what if sharp minds could be used for more than just battle?" The chamber went quiet. Several warriors shifted, hands moving toward weapons they weren't actually carrying. Minji tensed. Sarah raised one clawed hand for silence. "Continue, human. Explain your people's way of thinking. We would understand how you have changed our young." Taiho took a breath. This was important. He needed to get it right. "Humans aren't the strongest species," he began. "We're not the fastest or the toughest. For most of our history, we were prey. Things hunted us. But we survived because we learned to make things. We took rocks and turned them into tools. We took fire and learned to control it. We looked at the world and asked, how can this be better? And then we made it better. Even when it was not broken?" Sarah asked. "Especially when it wasn't broken," Taiho replied. "Because better exists beyond working. Better is always possible. That's how humans think. We can't stop ourselves from trying to improve things. It's not magic. It's just who we are." Minji translated his words carefully, watching the council's reaction. Some warriors looked confused. Others looked disturbed. A few looked interested. This is a dangerous way of thinking, Raketh said. If nothing is ever good enough, you are always dissatisfied. Always seeking more. Yes, Teho agreed. That's exactly right. And it makes us do foolish things sometimes. We take risks. We break things that were working fine. But it also makes us grow, change, become more than we were. Vrath do not need to become more, another warrior stated. We are already apex predators. You are, Wanshik said, speaking for the first time. No one questions your strength. But the galaxy is large and full of different kinds of strength. The Kalathi have technology that bends space. The Prefix have ships that move faster than light. The humans have... He paused. Well, humans have this annoying habit of making everything around them more complicated, and usually better. Sarah leaned forward on her throne. Show us, demonstrate this human way of fixing. Taiho looked at Minji. She shrugged. Wanshik nodded reluctantly. All right, Taiho said. Do you have something that needs repair? The display system, Sarah said, gesturing at the large holographic projector in the center of the chamber. It has been broken for 2 months. It shows only simple images now. We have accepted this. Accepted? Taiho walked over to examine it. Why accept it when you could fix it? Because it still functions for basic needs. Fixing would require time and effort better spent on training. Warriors. Taiho knelt down and opened his replacement tool bag. He had gotten new tools shipped from the human vessel in orbit after. The Cubs took his originals. He studied the projector's internal components. The problem is here, he said, pointing. This connector is loose, and this processing unit is running on minimum power. Give me 20 minutes. He worked while the council watched in silence. It was strange to see a human, small and soft by Vrath standards, working with such confidence. His hands moved quickly, disconnecting and reconnecting, adjusting and testing. He talked to himself while he worked, thinking out loud. This could be better if we reroute the power, and maybe add a feedback loop here. Actually, if we cross-connect these systems... Minji watched nervously. She knew that look. That was Taiho's I'm going to improve it beyond the original specifications look. That look had gotten them in trouble before. Done, Taiho announced, standing up. Sarah gestured to her assistant, who activated the display. The holographic projector hummed to life, but it didn't just show images anymore. It showed 3-dimensional scenes that looked completely real. You could walk through them and see details from every angle. The test image was of a Vrath hunting ground, and it looked so real that several warriors reached for weapons. But that wasn't all. The images also showed something else. Emotions. Intent. When Sarah looked at the display, it showed her thoughts as abstract patterns of light and color. What? What is this? Sarah asked. I fixed it, Taiho said, and then I made it better. Now it doesn't just show images, it shows meaning. Context, it's a better tool for communication. You changed its purpose, Raketh accused. I expanded its purpose, Taiho corrected. It does everything it did before plus more. That's what improvement means. The council members stood and approached the display, fascinated despite themselves. They watched as their thoughts became visible art, swirling patterns that represented ideas and feelings. It was strange and unsettling and wonderful. This is what the Cubs learned, Sarah said softly. This drive to not just fix but to transform. Yes, Minji confirmed. And once you learn it, you can't unlearn it. The Cubs will always see the world as something that can be improved now. That evening, as if summoned by the discussion, the 5 Cubs arrived at the council chamber. They had heard that the humans were there and wanted to show what they had been working on. Kira led the group, carrying a device she had built from spare parts and human tools. Matriarch, we have made something new. We would like to demonstrate. Sarah looked tired but gestured for them to proceed. Kira activated the device. It was a scanner of some kind, cobbled together from various components. When she pointed it at one of the warriors, it displayed information: heart rate, body temperature, state of health, even recent injuries. We made a health checker, Kira explained proudly. So warriors can know if they are ready for battle. No more guessing. No more warriors fighting when they should be resting. Hyun stepped forward with his project, a modified training blade that could adjust its weight and sharpness with a dial. For practice, Cubs can start light and increase difficulty as they improve. Safer, more efficient. Dabin showed a communication device that could translate Vrath speech into multiple languages instantly. Noru had built a weather predictor. Vec had created a tool that could detect structural weaknesses in buildings before they collapsed. Every invention was practical, useful, built with Vrath needs in mind, but using human problem-solving methods. The council members looked at these creations with mixed feelings: pride in the cubs' cleverness, concern about changing traditions, curiosity about what else might be possible. "This is why you came to our world," Reketh said to Wunschik. "Not just for treaties. You knew this would happen. You wanted to change us." "No," Wunschik replied honestly. "We didn't know this would happen. We never know what will happen when humans and other species interact. Sometimes nothing changes. Sometimes everything changes. We just try to be honest and see what develops." "Chaos," Sarah said, but she was looking at the cubs' inventions with something like admiration. "You bring chaos." "We call it progress," Minji said with a small smile. "Progress," Sarah repeated the word slowly, tasting it. A human concept. The idea that tomorrow should be different from today, better than today. She stood from her throne and approached the cubs. They looked up at her with hope and nervousness mixed together. "What you have done is not wrong," she told them. "It is not even improper. It is simply anew, and the Vrath have not had new things in a very long time." She turned to face the full council. "I propose we learn more about this human way of thinking, not to replace our strength but to add to it. Let the cubs continue their work. Let them teach others. We will see where this path leads, and if it leads to disaster," Reketh asked, "then we will be strong enough to survive it." Sarah replied, "We are Vrath, we adapt or we die. We have always known this. Perhaps it is time to adapt in a new direction." The council debated for another hour, but the decision was already made. Thus, 3 months had passed since the cubs discovered Taiho's tool bag, and the Vrath homeworld was no longer the same place. The changes started small, a few cubs asking their parents for tools, some young Vrath taking apart old equipment to see how it worked, adults grumbling but allowing it because matriarch Sarah had given her blessing. But small changes grow. Taiho stood on a hill overlooking the capital city and tried to process what he was seeing. The city had been built from dark stone and metal, all harsh angles and defensive walls. It was designed by warriors for warriors, practical, strong, meant to last. Now it glowed. Young Vrath had installed lights everywhere, not just for visibility, but for beauty. Buildings that used to be plain now had patterns etched into them that caught the light. Streets that were once simple paths now had designs that told stories. And everywhere there were modifications. "Is that building moving?" Minji asked, pointing at a residential tower. Taiho followed her gaze. The tower was indeed shifting slowly, its floors rotating to give each apartment a turn facing the sun. Solar panels built by Vrath cubs learning from human designs caught the red light of their star. "Yes," he said weakly. "I think they made rotating apartments." "That's actually brilliant," Minji admitted. "Equal sunlight for everyone. It's also insane. That building was built 300 years ago. It wasn't designed to rotate." "It is now," Wunschik said, joining them on the hill. He had aged visibly in the past 3 months. "The Galactic Council has been sending me messages. Do you know what they're asking? They want to know what we did. Other species are concerned." "Concerned?" Taiho asked, terrified actually. The Vrath were already apex predators. Now they're apex predators with human engineering skills and human curiosity. Yesterday, 3 Vrath ships appeared in Federation space. The ships had been completely redesigned. They don't just fly now, they phase through obstacles. The Federation thought they were being invaded. Turns out the Vrath were just testing improvements and forgot to file a flight plan. Minji laughed to spite herself. "That's very human of them." "That's the problem," Wunschik said. "They're becoming like us. And the galaxy already thinks one species of crazy innovators is enough." Down in the city, Kira was leading a group of 20 young Vrath through the marketplace. Each one carried tools, some human-made, others built by Vrath following human principles. They called themselves the Fixers, and they had become famous, or infamous depending on who you asked. "There," Kira pointed at a shop that sold food. "The cooling system is inefficient. We can make it better." The shopkeeper, an older Vrath named Gorith, saw them coming and groaned. "Not again. The last time you helped, my shop played music for a week. My customers thought I had gone mad. The music was to improve the shopping experience, Kira explained patiently. Studies show that pleasant sounds make people buy more food. What studies? We don't have studies. We're Vrath, we hunt, we fight, we eat. We don't study shopping. We do now, Hyun said cheerfully. He was already examining the cooling unit. Look at this. The refrigerant is circulating in a basic loop. No efficiency optimization, no temperature zones, just cold everywhere at the same level. That's what cooling systems do, Gorith protested. That's what bad cooling systems do, Dabin corrected. She pulled out a modified scanner. Different foods need different temperatures. Meat should be colder than vegetables. Drinks should be coldest of all. You're wasting energy and reducing food quality. I've been running this shop for 40 years. Yes, and we can make it better, Kira said. It will only take an hour. Gorith knew he had lost. Everyone in the city knew you couldn't stop the fixers once they decided to help you. They meant well, and their improvements usually worked, but they transformed everything they touched. Fine, he sighed. But if my shop starts talking to customers again, I'm complaining to the matriarch. Deal, Kira said, and the fixers went to work. They didn't just fix the cooling system. That wasn't the Vrath way anymore, not the new way at least. They improved it. They added zones. They installed sensors that monitored food freshness. They created a display system that showed customers which foods were newest. When they were done an hour later, the cooling system used half the energy and kept food twice as fresh. It also hummed pleasantly, a sound that Gorith had to admit was nicer than the old rattling noise. Thank you, he said grudgingly. You're welcome, Kira replied. Now about your inventory system. No. But she was already looking at his stockroom with that expression that meant she saw room for improvement. Across the city, other fixers were doing similar work. Noru had organized a group that focused on public infrastructure. They had redesigned the water distribution system to be more efficient. They had improved street lighting to adjust based on activity levels. They had even modified the city's waste processing to produce usable materials instead of just disposing of trash. Vec led a team that worked on personal devices. Vrath had never been interested in technology for its own sake, but now young Vrath wanted communicators, scanners, and tools that made their lives easier. Vec's team built them, each device slightly better than the last, learning and improving with every iteration. Not everyone was happy about the changes. Traditional warriors complained that the young were forgetting the old ways. Clan elders worried that all this building and fixing made the Vrath soft, but they couldn't deny the results. The city ran better. Life was easier. Problems that had been accepted for generations were being solved by cubs who refused to accept limitations. Raketh, Kira's father, watched his daughter work and felt a complicated mix of emotions. He was proud, how could he not be? She was brilliant and determined, showing leadership that would serve her well if she chose to become a clan leader someday. But he was also worried. The old ways were being lost. Young Vrath spent more time with tools than with weapons. They talked about efficiency instead of honor. They solved problems with cleverness instead of strength. He went to speak with Sarah about his concerns. The matriarch's home had itself been improved by the fixers. The door now recognized visitors and announced them. The walls displayed art that changed based on Sarah's mood. The heating system kept every room at exactly the temperature she preferred. She received Raketh in her meeting chamber, which had a ceiling that showed the stars in real time. Another improvement installed by enthusiastic cubs. You are troubled, Sarah observed. Let me guess. You worry about the changes, don't you? Raketh sat across from her. Our cubs barely train for combat anymore. They're too busy building things. What happens when war comes? When we need warriors, not engineers? Do you really think war is coming? Sarah asked. War always comes eventually. Perhaps. But consider this. 3 months ago, the Kalathi Empire saw us as dangerous primitives. Strong but backward. Now they send delegations to study our innovations. They treat us as equals. We don't need their respect. We have our strength. And now we have more than strength. We have value to other species. They want to learn from us. Trade with us. Alliance with us. Not because they fear us, but because we offer something they need. Raketh frowned, thinking about this. You believe the cubs are making us more powerful, not less. I believe they are making us different. Whether that's more or less powerful, time will tell. But Raketh, did you know that 5 other species have contacted me in the past month? They want to send their own young to learn from our fixers. The Wrath are becoming teachers, influencers. We're shaping the galaxy instead of just surviving in it. That's not the Wrath way. It is now, Sarah said firmly. And you know what I've noticed? The cubs who spend all day fixing things, they're stronger than our warriors were at their age. They lift heavy equipment. They work for hours without stopping. They solve complex problems under pressure.
They're not weak, Raketh.
They're adapting strength to new purposes. Before Raketh could respond, there was a commotion outside. They both went to investigate. A crowd had gathered in the central square. At the center of the crowd were the 5 original fixers, Kira, Hyon, Dabin, Noru, and Vec, along with what looked like a small spacecraft, but it was like no spacecraft Raketh had ever seen. It was sleek and beautiful, with curves that seemed impossible and surfaces that shifted colors in the light. "What is that?" he asked. "That," Kira announced proudly to the crowd, "is the future. We built it ourselves using human engineering principles and Wrath materials. It's a research vessel designed to explore space more efficiently than any ship currently in service." "You built a ship?" Sarah pushed through the crowd. "You're cubs. You don't have the authority to build ships." "We didn't need authority," Hyun said. "We just needed tools and time and a problem to solve. The problem was that Wrath ships are designed for combat, not exploration. So we designed a ship for exploration." "Show us," someone in the crowd called out. The cubs looked at each other nervously. Then Kira nodded. They all climbed into the ship, and a moment later it lifted off the ground without a sound. It moved through the air like a living thing, smooth and graceful. It ascended to the clouds, then dove back down, performing maneuvers that should have been impossible for something that size. Then it landed exactly where it had taken off, without even disturbing the dust. 6 months had changed everything. Taiho stood in what used to be the embassy compound and tried to remember what it had looked like when he first arrived. That seemed impossible now. The compound had been improved so many times that it barely resembled its original form. The walls were still there, technically, but they were now made of a material that the fixers had developed, something between metal and crystal that was stronger than either, and let light through in beautiful patterns. The doors didn't just open anymore. They greeted you by name and asked about your day. The building itself seemed almost alive, responding to the needs of everyone inside. "Welcome back, Engineer Taiho," the compound said in a pleasant voice. "You've been away for 2 hours. There are 3 messages waiting for you, and lunch will be ready in 10 minutes based on your usual preferences. Would you like to hear the news from the Federation?" "Sure," Taiho said, still not quite used to talking buildings. "The Galactic Federation has officially recognized the Wrath as a Tier 2 civilization, up from Tier 3. This is the fastest advancement in Federation history. In other news, the Kalathi Empire has signed a technology-sharing agreement with the Wrath Council, and 7 different species have requested permission to establish cultural exchange programs on the Wrath homeworld." "Thank you," Taiho said. "You're welcome. Also, Kira is waiting for you in the garden. She says it's important." Of course she was. Kira always had something important to discuss. The young Wrath had become something like a celebrity in the 6 months since she had found his tool bag. She was the face of the Fixer movement, the one who gave speeches and organized projects and inspired other Wrath to embrace this new way of thinking. Taiho found her in the garden, which was no longer flooding. The Fixers had improved the water system so many times that it now created perfectly controlled displays of water and light that danced to music that only the water could hear. It was beautiful and made no sense, which seemed to be the theme of most Wrath improvements. Kira had grown. She was almost adult-sized now, her gray fur sleek and her movements confident, but her eyes still held that curious spark, that need to understand and improve everything around her. "Taiho," she said in human language. Her accent was still thick, but she had learned quickly. "I need to show you something. Something important." "Is it another ship?" Taiho asked. "Because the Federation is still processing the last one you built. Better than a ship." Kira's tail wagged slightly, a sign of excitement. "Come with me." She led him out of the compound and into the city. Taiho marveled at the changes every time he saw them. The Wrath capital had transformed from a fortress city into something that looked like art and function had a child. Buildings grew food on their walls. Streets generated power from footsteps. Public spaces included areas for both traditional combat training and what humans would call parks. Young Wrath were everywhere, working on projects. Some built, some tested, some taught others. The whole city hummed with activity and purpose. They arrived at a large building near the city center. It was new, constructed entirely by the fixers over the past month. The sign above the door read Vrath Institute of Applied Innovation in both Vrath and human languages. You built a school? Tejo asked. Not just a school. A center for learning human thinking. Kira pushed open the door. Inside was amazing. The main hall was huge, filled with workstations where young Vrath studied, built, and experimented. There were areas for different subjects: engineering, biology, physics, art, and things that didn't have names yet. Adult Vrath moved among the students, some human, some from other species, all teaching and guiding. We have 300 students now, Kira explained. Cubs from every clan. They come to learn how to think differently, how to question, how to improve. We teach them about tools and methods, but more importantly, we teach them about possibility. Kira, this is incredible. It gets better. Come see the main project. She led him through the building to a large workshop in the back. There, spread out on tables and hanging from the ceiling, were components of something enormous. Hyun, Dabin, Noru, and Vek were there, along with dozens of other young Vrath all working together. What is it? Tejo asked. A gift, Vek said, looking up from his work. For humanity. For teaching us. Tejo walked around the components, trying to understand what he was seeing. There were power systems, structural elements, what looked like living metal that moved on its own, and crystalline matrices that hummed with energy. It's a station, Hyun explained. A space station, but not like the ones humans or other species build. This one uses everything we've learned. It can move. It can grow. It can adapt to whoever lives in it. It's alive, in a way. Conscious. It will be the most advanced structure in known space. And you want to give it to humanity? Tejo felt overwhelmed. You gave us tools, Kira said simply. We give you this. Fair trade. Kira, this must have cost. I can't even imagine the resources. The clans donated everything we needed. Even the traditional warriors contributed. They understand now that strength takes many forms. Building something amazing is its own kind of victory. Dabin approached with a small device. We also made you this. A new tool bag. With tools we designed ourselves, based on human principles but improved for Vrath strength and precision. Every tool can do multiple things. Every function has been optimized. It's the best tool bag in the galaxy. Tejo took it carefully. The bag was beautiful, made from materials he didn't recognize, with tools that looked like art. I don't know what to say. Say you'll help us finish the station, Noru suggested. We're good at building, but you understand human needs better than we do. We want it to be perfect. Of course I'll help. But Noru, Kira, all of you, you know this isn't just about tools anymore, right? You've created something new. A culture that values innovation as much as strength. That's bigger than any station or ship. We know, Kira said. That's why we're building the school. To make sure this doesn't stop with us. To teach every Vrath cub that the world can be changed, should be changed, and that they have the power to change it. Over the next weeks, Tejo worked with the fixers to complete the space station. It was the most challenging and rewarding project of his career. The young Vrath were brilliant, fearless, and creative in ways that constantly surprised him. They saw solutions that human engineers would never consider. They combined art and function so seamlessly that you couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Meanwhile, the changes on the Vrath homeworld continued to accelerate. The Institute of Applied Innovation opened branches in other cities. Adult Vrath, who had initially resisted the changes, began to see their value and joined the movement. Traditional combat training was supplemented with engineering and science. The clans competed not just in strength anymore, but in innovation. Ambassador Wonshik watched all this with mixed feelings. He met with Minji and Tejo one evening in his office, which the compound had modified to include a window that showed any place in the galaxy the ambassador wanted to see. The Federation is still trying to figure out how to respond, he said. Half the species are terrified. They think we've created a monster, apex predators with human innovation capabilities. The other half are fascinated and want to learn how we did it. We didn't do anything, Minji said. The Vrath did this themselves. That's what I keep telling them, but no one believes it. They think we had some grand plan. They don't understand that this was an accident. Was it, though? Tejo asked. Maybe some part of me knew what would happen when I left those tools out. Maybe I wanted to see what would grow from sharing our way of thinking. That's a comforting thought, one chick said dryly. Means we accidentally revolutionized an entire species on purpose. The question is, what happens next? Minji looked out at the city, which was glowing with lights and life and activity. The Vrath are changing so fast. Where does it end? It doesn't, Kira said. They all turned. She had entered the office silently, using one of the compound's many doorways that led to places they shouldn't lead to. The building liked her and let her go where she wanted. Change doesn't end, Kira continued. That's what we learned from humans. Every improvement leads to new possibilities. Every solution creates new questions. We'll keep changing forever, and that's good. Stagnation is death. That's very wise, one chick said. I learned it from you, from all humans. You show us that being smart and curious is its own kind of strength. Maybe better than claws and teeth. I wouldn't say better, Taiho cautioned. Different, complementary. Yes, we keep our strength but add new ways of thinking. Best of both. Kira moved to the window and looked out at her world. Do you know what I want to do next? I'm almost afraid to ask, one chick said. Teach other species. The Kalathi asked for help with their energy systems. The Prethiks want to learn our building techniques. Even the Federation wants advisors. We could send fixers across the galaxy, share what we've learned, help others improve. You want to export the revolution, Minji said. Why not? Humans share their knowledge. We should too. Make the whole galaxy better. One chick rubbed his temples. The Federation will panic. Let them panic. Panic leads to change. Change leads to improvement. Kira grinned, showing teeth. Besides, they can't stop us. We're Vrath.